Hello, Internet, and welcome once again to the Free-to-Play cast brought to you by MMOBomb.com. Our guest host is already laughing at me. It is episode 159. We're recording on November 4th. You're watching it on November 5th, 2015 or later. I'm your host, Mike Byrne, a.k.a. Magicman. As always, joining me to talk some free-to-play games. You know him, you love him, he's got no legs. From Free-to-Play Weekly, Mr. Zach Sharps. How are you, sir?
What's up? I'm doing alright. Could have woke up a little bit earlier, get some work done, but I didn't. It happens.
Of course not. Why do things the right way?
Exactly.
If you've already seen the title of today's show, you know who our guest host is. It's the Star Wars guru himself from over at MassivelyOP.net. Good friend of mine, Mr. Larry Everett. How are you?
I am good. And have you seen the new posters?
I have.
And did you have to change your pants?
Well, I don't wear pants, so...
Oh, well, there you go.
I didn't.
All right.
Yeah, it just made cleanup real easy. Cleanup was very easy. Very excited. We are just a little over a month away from Star Wars Episode 7.
Those posters were amazing. I was honestly surprised at the looks of those posters because it's not something that you see in normal Star Wars kind of
Posters.
Advertising. Yeah,
right.
Usually it's like a montage, which they did. Obviously, they did that montage thing already for the official posters, but the newest ones.
Yeah.
With just the character posters, that's really, really good.
I love the Han Solo one.
Yeah, the Han Solo. I actually liked. I did like the Han Solo one, obviously, but Leia's was actually really surprising as well. I was surprised at how good that looked.
Yeah, well, I was surprised at that too, but I'm going to be gentle. Quite honestly, I was kind of like, is that Carrie? There's no way that's Carrie. Is that really Carrie? I've seen her recently, and that's not... No, that's... Anyway... Yeah. We've got Larry on because we wanted to talk Star Wars in depth about the Old Republic. We had talked a little bit about it last week. We kind of stayed away from spoilers and some content because the early access had just ended, and players who did not have it were just now experiencing the expansion. It is now a week later. You've had your chance to play it. There may be spoilers in here. Fair warning. Let's head over to the news and get started. All right. Larry, first, I would like to just ask you your overall thoughts. You've written some articles, you've posted some videos. This expansion, Knights of the Fallen Empire, was a bit different than some of the previous expansions, although we had seen this almost exodus back towards story in Revan, and then continuing on even more so in Knights of the Fallen Empire. But on our show, for the record, for viewers that may not be checking out your content, they're doing the internet wrong. I know.
They are, clearly.
But for viewers that have not, tell us a little bit about your overall impressions now that you've had 2 weeks to soak in the expansion.
And got to play through it like 12 billion times. Yeah. I was surprised and impressed. I was actually okay. So I come at it. I like the content. I like the story of Vanilla Tour.
Every time Larry looks down, he's hiding behind his lower third.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me sit up here a little
there
bit.
You go.
Sorry about that. All right. So I liked the. I did like the original content, but I liked the story that was behind it. It wasn't necessarily the cinematic presentation of it. I've always been kind of critical of that. I do like. I mean, even though I know some people don't like the character models and things along that line, I was always kind of a fan of the character models, but. The cinematic presentation I always felt was kind of lacking. However, this time around, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like I was really quite impressed with the way that they did the camera angles, the way they presented the characters. The character models have changed. Not your character models, not your player character models, but the new ones are different. And I'm overall impressed with just the presentation, the story that they have given us, and so I would give it an A definitely. But we're not scoring here. But
last week I did score, and so did Zach. I scored it at about a 9.
Yeah.
A 9.5 even out of 10. I reserved that last 0.5 because I was just starting the whole alliance stuff, and I
Yes.
wanted to see, okay, am I going to do the same 9 things over and over and over and over again, and is that all it's going to be? I basically called it a home run for BioWare. Even though, hey, that didn't mean I liked your cash shop or anything all of a sudden. But I called the expansion a home run for BioWare, and I did quote you on last week's show where you had said in one of your pieces that if Star Wars: The Old Republic would have launched like this, the game would be in an even better position now at this point than it already is.
Absolutely, and it's just so. The biggest thing that I like about the game is kind of the things that have been receiving some criticism from people that are playing the game. I liked some of the single player ish kind of parts of it. I liked the. I liked the story of it, but I also liked the fact that beyond the main story, everything can be done kind of solo, right? It can be done without the assistance of anybody else, for the most part. And
ironically, though, I find myself grouping more now than I was prior to this expansion. And Zach, you said kind of the same thing last week.
That's kind of weird. It's like, okay, this stuff can kind of be done solo now, but it's easier to find people wanting to do it.
Yeah.
Blows my mind. But
who knew?
Who knew that solo content was the thing that makes you want to group up? I don't know. But it is. It really is, and it's so much easier to get into all of this stuff. Everything is kind of like even the heroics and whatnot. The alliance stuff is easier to get into.
Yep.
Really quickly. Yeah, I'm totally on board. This is what they should have launched with, and it is. Yeah, it's Tor. It's the Tor game that I think we all have always wanted now.
It's the Tor game we deserve, but not the Tor game we need. Zach, you actually had a question that I think would better be served by Larry answering it. I've played through the main story twice. Once with my Jedi Knight, and once with my new 60 that they gave me that I promptly rolled through everything with as a Sith Juggernaut. Now, coming from the Jedi Knight and the Sith Juggernaut point of view, the story was mostly the same for me because they were both Sith users. There was some slight variance here and there, but mostly the same. Zach, you wanted to talk about and have Larry answer about some of the other characters, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly, because I personally have a Sith Sorcerer, that's my main, and then I instant 60'd a Jedi, so both Force users. How does the story change? Because when I did it on both sides, the Jedi and also Sith, it was basically the same, and I was quite disappointed about that. Is the other classes different, or they follow the same storyline?
It's pretty much the same. There's a few like minor variants, just like. So, for instance, I mean, if to not give away a whole lot of spoilerage, because I don't want to spoil a whole bunch, even because I do want people to play through this. But like for instance, at the beginning when Darth Maul is talking about how that he senses that the Emperor is in this area, or whenever they're talking to the Sith, the Valkorian, talking to Valkorian. Yeah. He's the one that initiates all the Force-related things, and your character just kind of goes, "What?"
Qua?
Exactly. So, so there's not a whole lot of that, but as far as the dream sequence with Valkorian, that doesn't change. All of these other little things don't change. I mean, you don't lift up the ship with the Force, like but you don't participate in that. But but other than that, I mean, it's the same. It's pretty much
basically the same except for subtle changes. Okay.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. There's not. You're not. Unfortunately, you're not a different class. You're not. It's not a totally different class story as it had been in the past.
That's what I was wondering, because they're essentially trying to make people pay, I think it's like about 8 months worth of subscriptions to keep up with the storyline as the new parts release. And so I was wondering whether or not they actually warranted that by making it a multi-prong storyline like the original class stories were, where you can play through every single class story and have a vastly different experience, but it seems like they didn't do that, and that's kind of disappointing from that front.
It is a little bit disappointing, but just to be fair on that, if for some reason, the reason that you want to play Tor now, the only reason that you want to play Tor now is because of the story in the expansion, there's nothing saying that you can't hold off and wait till all of them are released before jumping into it and getting the whole thing all at once, because that's all it. Yeah, you don't have to pay 16, or well, not 16 months. It'd be, what did you say, 8 months of content. You don't have to pay each month for one chapter. You can wait till all the chapters are released and then jump into it and get all of them for $15 or whatever.
Yeah, I plan on doing that too, because one of the things that I was really happy about is the way that they ended the initial 9 chapters, because it sort of hit a climax and then it sort of evened out and sort of set the tone for the rest of the storyline moving forward. So they did a good job in sort of with the storytelling and the flow of the chapters. It's just I kind of see exactly what they were going for. They want to boost their subscriber numbers because subscribers are guaranteed income, and I know that they always are trying to get more income, and they know with the Star Wars movie coming out that they're going to get more people into the game, and the game has seen a ton of people into the game already, because I go around different areas, I see people everywhere now, where before that wasn't the case. Everyone was just clumped into the Imperial fleet. So I'm quite... my stance on the expansion for the most part hasn't changed. I know we'll get more into the alliances, especially since I finally got to check out the alliances, and I know Larry probably needs to talk about his thoughts on it. So
yeah, and that's kind of where we're going to go next, because if you're looking for, should I sub up for 1 month, yes, the story is worth that. It's definitely worth paying $15. If you never watch a cutscene through the whole thing, you're going to knock it all out in about 5 hours, but you'd be doing yourself a huge disservice, because the cutscenes are very well done. The story is very well done. It's definitely worth shelling out $15, playing through the 9 chapters that are available. I did it at a very leisurely pace, and it took me like 2 days, 2 to 3 days, with a couple hours each day. I enjoyed the whole experience. But for those of us that are more of the MMORPG crowd, and maybe not the Knights of the Old Republic, go play the story crowd, the question then becomes, what do I do when I'm done with that story and I'm waiting for the next chapters? Is that content, the content that's going to keep me busy for X weeks while I wait for the next chapter, the Alliance content, the Star Fortress content, all of that, the flashpoints and things like that, the reworking of all the flashpoints, is that content going to keep me engaged, and is it going to be worth a sub if maybe I'm paying $15 for 1 month with no chapters released in that month, which is probably going to be the case, knowing BioWare's typical release schedules on things. So let's talk about that content. And I've given my opinions about the alliances, which I'm really still enjoying now a week later from the other show, and the interaction with the companions and the shuffling of resources to make sure, okay, well, I want to get this faction and this thing up, and so let's send these resources to this person. There's an awful lot of meta going on in the Alliance stuff that I do enjoy. Where do you sit on it, Larry, now that you've run that stuff hundreds of times?
I have. That's okay. So,
and I want to bring, when you give your opinion, I want to bring a viewer question directly to you on this topic. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Excellent. Well, I'll say that for me personally, in my play style and the things that I enjoy out of Star Wars: The Old Republic, I really, really like it. It is the whole idea that I can play this thing solo and it's going to be challenging again for me. Like, for instance, when we go back and do the heroics and things like that, and having the level syncing, that is amazing for me. I love it. It's still a little challenging. It's not like some of the stuff is I know some people are going to yell at me saying, but I just walk right through that stuff now. Yes.
Yeah, you're still overpowered.
Yeah, you're still overpowered.
You're just not 30 levels overpowered anymore.
Exactly. So, I mean, there are things that me being in like full raid gear, yes, I am walking right through this and just plowing through things. However, if I want a little bit of a challenge, I go and play a class that I'm not quite used to, and that I don't necessarily have the best gear on, and it's fun. It's fun again, and also getting a group together to do these kinds of things, which happens all the time for me, that's a lot of fun. However, this is where people are going to find it grindy. People are going to find it where it's not as much fun for them. Is if you don't have a guild or you don't have a regular group of people that you play with. It's going to become, I think it's going to become grindy really quickly, because the heroics tend to be all mechanic based. It's all like, go do this, click on this thing, kill 10 of these guys, loot this guy. You know, the typical MMO kind of things that you find. And if you're doing that solo, I can absolutely see how that will become grindy. Like once you finish the first 12 or so, getting the 12 or so companions that you get, then you're kind of done as far as the solo player is concerned. There's not a whole lot more to do. The heroic 2s are challenging if you do them without any of the help from the alliance people that you get.
Right.
Those are challenging, but yeah, it's for the solo player. It's going to be really, really rough. You're going to have to find a group or get a regular group together that does raids, because raids are, oh my gosh, raids are amazing now. I mean, being able to jump into a raid instantly and just like with a group of people and get through the content. It's a little more challenging if people haven't ever seen the raids before, because there's some people in my guild that came into the game late and they hadn't seen some of the earlier raids, so this is the first time that they're seeing them, and it's a challenge again.
Yeah.
Some of these raid bosses are challenging again. So,
and I tend to agree.
Yeah.
I'm currently ungilded, but I do have an awful lot of friends on the server, so I have a steady stream of people that I play with. And that kind of segues nicely to a viewer question that we got, knowing that we were going to have the guru himself on this week. This is from Elusive X Treasure, who comments on almost every free-to-play cast. Love her husband, too. They're good people. She says, yeah, I'm back. I have to give my 2 cents on SWTOR. Bravo on the storytelling, and I'm glad that this is the direction they went. Too many MMOs can't do the story. However, what they did with the flashpoints was a major deal breaker for me. Let me explain why. I love alts. I'm an RPer, and this combined, so is Larry, so that's why I'm giving you the question, big guy.
Okay.
I'm an RPer, and this combined with fun gameplay results in servers full of characters. I'm not an endgame person. I do it at times, but it's not where I live in the game, so to speak. What I feel is the fun of the game for me, aside from the story, is the leveling experience. I like gaining new abilities, seeing my character grow, and learning to play as I go. I play DPS, tanks, and healers. I like the group mechanics. There was a reason I avoided tactical flashpoints after having tried a few. Tactical should mean that because you don't have all the roles, you need to rely on what you do have and work together. In practice, however, what it actually does is enable the spacebar spamming face poolers to utterly destroy the party experience. Instead of teamwork, you end up with anti-teammates, so to speak, most of the time. Furthermore, now people don't have any reason to even try to learn their role properly, so terrible tanks and healers will be all the more terrible. Tanks, on another note, are more or less pointless now, at least in the parties without a healer. But honestly, I could deal with all of that if they didn't auto-boost you to pseudo 65. Why? Just why? So they've negated the point of rolls, negated the point of leveling, all in one fell swoop. I'm all for dungeon level sync to the dungeons level, but this, I don't even know how long I'll be subbed at this point. Flashpoints were my preferred method of leveling, so once I'm done with the story, what's the point for me anymore? Can we give Elusive X Treasure a little help here? A little light at the end of the tunnel, because it sounds like that light might be a train coming straight at her, the way that this is worded.
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around that perspective. I understand it to a point. Now I don't see flashpoints. Flashpoints have never been my thing. I really have had.
Larry's eating his lower third again.
I'm sorry.
Every time.
Gosh, because flashpoints have always been a little bit of trouble for me to just jump into and play. Now I've had a group of people that I would run with on a regular basis to do flashpoints and that kind of thing, but to do it like
as the primary content.
Yeah, as like the primary content is a little bit difficult for me to wrap my head around, because she is right. Things are really simplified now when it comes to flashpoints, and that's probably one of the main reasons that I avoid them, is because they are kind of a steamroll when it comes down to it. And I do like the challenge of having different roles and things along that line. And I want a healer to have to know how to heal. I want a tank to have to know how to maintain aggro. Those kinds of things. And once you get to a certain gear level, even like the gear level that you can get just by completing everything and then using your comms or crystals in the correct way, buying the 216 or the 208 armor, it's kind of a steamroll at that point. So
maybe it's time to move to operations.
Honestly, yeah, that's kind of
what it sounds like to me.
That's kind of my thought for her. I know flashpoints are kind of easy to get into, but you know what? Operations are kind of easy to get into too. And if you're on my server, and if you're on the Ebon Hawk, and I'll give her some specific advice for being on the Ebon Hawk. I don't know how it works on other servers, but there is a channel called Allies. It's on the Republic side. It's on the Imperial side. They run more than flashpoints. They run operations all the time. They're generally good groups of people. If you join that channel, you can get into operations pretty easily.
And it kind of sounds like to me what Elusive X Treasure used to like about flashpoints. That content is still there. It's just moved now to the operations to me.
Right.
You're going to need a couple of more people, but you're talking about 4 versus 8 or 3 versus however you want to pick and mix it. You're talking about a couple extra sets of hands now, but that content is still there. It has become operations, and then the nightmare stuff has now become what used to be the operations way back when. So the content's still there for her. I think it's just moved a little bit.
Yeah, one of my biggest gripes with the flashpoints, and it's always been an issue, and I think it's never going to change, is the fact that the game itself has been casualized in a sense in that direction. Because I remember back in the day when I was playing World of Warcraft Burning Crusade, and the heroic dungeons were amazing. You actually had a CC, tanks had to know how to play, healers had to know how to play, and I really appreciated the content a lot more because I actually was challenged by the content. Where now with Star Wars The Old Republic, I know we're paying in the sense that it's steamroll easy. Some people don't really know how to play their class, like tanks. I always pull aggro off tanks really easily. Healers, they sometimes just sit there and do absolutely nothing. I've had to kick multiple healers in multiple groups because they say, oh, I only chose healer to get faster queues. Well, that's not the point of queuing. So it's one of those things where I know we're paying. The operations probably is a short-term fix, but I would really like BioWare to add a story queue. And then also for at least flashpoints, and then also with the flashpoints in general, make them more difficult. Because sure, maybe the younger folks may want more of a casualized experience, but I know for myself,
Zach, you're like 12. How much younger folk are playing Star Wars? And by the way, I just noticed, is your camera on mirror mode? Everything's reversed in your house.
Yeah.
Okay. I was freaking me out for a second. All right.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where I want a more difficult experience, and I've always wanted that from Star Wars: The Old Republic, because I want to use my whirlwind. I want to use my electrocute to stun targets, to CC them. But there's no use to using them in the setting that they give us, because they're just like, at least make like an elite mode or something that's really difficult, because there's no excuse for it. And so I completely agree with her in that sense, but it's not something that'll make me quit the game by any means.
So, Elusive X Treasure. The advice is, if you're on the Ebon Hawk, join allies, and if you ever are queuing up and you see Zach Sharps in your party, just leave immediately because he's gonna boot you. Uh, all right, let's wrap it.
I'm making a character right now called Zach Sharps.
All right, let's move on from SWTOR here. We got a little bit of other news to talk about here. And Larry, I know you don't jump into too many other games. You're pretty dependable when it comes to Star Wars: The Old Republic being the game at the time. But we're going to talk a little bit about Blade and Soul, and I know you've had to have at least had your eyes on it because it's been in the works for a Western release for, I don't know, 15, 20-some years now.
I played a little bit of it at PAX.
Actually. Awesome. Well, we've got the beta. Zach, did you get a chance to jump in?
No, but
Okay.
I've played enough of Blade and Soul on the Russian and Chinese servers to know exactly what people are getting into. So
Gotcha. I'm going to start off right away. I enjoyed this far more than I thought I was going to. I had no hype for it anymore. I didn't have much hype to begin with a couple of years ago because I'm just not into, the kung fu, the martial arts inspired stuff. It's just not me. I don't sit there and watch kung fu movies and things like that. But, okay, I'll check it out when it comes. And now it's been so many years, I just didn't care. I had far more fun in the beta than I thought I was going to have. Now, I don't think that means, hey, great game. I'm not ready to go there yet. I still have to see, is this going to stick with me for a little while? I enjoyed getting to about level 20, which is where I got to in the closed beta. I actually liked the combat and the combo stuff. The UI needs some work. A lot of work. Even though it's pretty fully customizable, it's still a pretty nasty looking UI. So, yeah, those were some of my general first impressions. The game looks nice graphically. It's not top tier, but it's certainly not bottom tier. We'll talk about close to bottom tier in just a second. I gotta say, though, I had a pleasant weekend with it. You've played it a lot more than I have on the Russian server, Zach. What am I going to expect now that I'm going to be pushing beyond 20 and starting to hit some more of the content, or am I going to be hitting more of the same for another 20 hours wide level? What can I look forward to, and what is maybe going to dull my experience now that I've had an initial positive one?
Well, one of the biggest issues with Blade and Soul is it's the same old, except for the combat and maybe the PvP because of
and
the
I totally
fact
agree.
that PvP
100%.
feels exactly like a fighting game in the sense that you have to know each class to know their counters so you know what to look for and you know how to play mind games against specific classes to make them maybe utilize some of their cooldowns maybe when they shouldn't. And so when it comes to the leveling experience, you're going to have the same old experience you already have. You're going to run into more sort of solo-ish to group dungeons. You're going to do a little bit more XYZ questing. You might encounter a little bit more PvP, especially once you get that option available to you. But it's going to be PvP that you are allowed to bypass if you don't want to really encounter it. And so it's one of those things where Blade and Soul should have released 3 years ago if it wanted to excel. Now that it's waited 3 years, there's already a lot of experiences that sort of do the same types of things Blade and Soul does. Maybe not to a degree of perfection with the combat, being that it is soft targeting, but the game's built around it. It's one of those things where people are going to hop into it and call it a WoW clone because of the way that you progress your character. And once you reach endgame, which I didn't really dabble with too much on the Russian servers or the Chinese servers. I got like level 30 on the Chinese servers, and I got level 45-ish on the Russian servers. But I didn't really see much of a change once I got up to that point. And that was really troublesome looking at it from a Western perspective because I know how the Western audience reacts to these things, and I see it sort of being the same reaction people had with Terra initially, that, wow, this game really doesn't do much things amazing, and it's going to take them months to years to get it to a point where people are really liking it. And at that point, graphically speaking, considering some of the textures in Blade and Soul are absolutely abysmal, some zones look better than others, I think a lot of people may just sort of enjoy it a little bit, but not really play it for the long term. So I think NCSoft really missed the mark with their release date.
And it's hard to argue with that. I mean, even in the first look, I said, look, I'm having fun with it, but I can't really put my thumb on why, because all the quests and everything are exactly the same as every other MMO I've ever played. The story is, I stopped reading it at about chapter 7, chapter 8, because I did want to save that for when I actually play at launch, because this character is going to be wiped, and I didn't want to burn out on the story. Now, but I was enjoying it. It was cliche. It was, everything you'd expect it to be, but I was enjoying it. I really like the combat, and I don't know what it was about it. It's not quite Terra. It's not quite tab targeting. It's kind of right in the middle there. It hits a nice spot for me. I really liked it as far as the combat goes. Larry, your thoughts, Blade and Soul?
Well, I didn't play the beta, so I played it at PAX, and I did. So I have a lot of empathy for games that are pushing the envelope as far as the different kinds of combat systems are concerned. And so like for instance, whenever DC Universe came out, I loved it. I loved that kind of soft targeting combat system. It was amazing. And so I have a lot of empathy for Blade and Soul, and I really as far as that is concerned, and if I'd had more time to really kind of get used to how the combo system works, I think I would have liked it a little bit more. But it didn't really do a lot for me as far as the storyline was concerned. Or again, this was just at PAX, so it was only for 15, 20 minutes that I played, and there was nothing that really grabbed me other than the combat system. And
the story's generic as hell.
Yeah. So,
and that's why I didn't want to read it more than once. I was like, you know what? Okay, I am liking where it's going. I can see where a lot of this is going, but I'm going to stop reading for right now because I know I'm going to have to read all this stuff again anyway.
So yeah. I mean, if you want an interesting combat system, I do think that their combat system is interesting. I do like the counters and the combinations and those kinds of things. Definitely something to latch on to, and it is also it's not exactly your generic fantasy either. I kind of liked that about it as well. And the character, I don't know. I know Zach was talking about the environments sometimes, that those kind of deteriorating a little bit as you go through. But I do like the character models though, and the animations that go along with the character models. Those are superb and just amazing.
Even though sometimes your clothing seems to have a mind of its own. Your character goes one way and your clothes go the other way.
Well,
at the end of the day, it is really hard though to argue with the big elephant in the room with Blade and Soul, and that is it should have come out in the West a few years ago. Yeah. When it took off in the East, it should have come out in the West at that point. And right now, NCSoft's financials were just released for Q3. Blade and Soul continues to go down in the East. Actually, NCSoft's entire portfolio went down for the third quarter. So, yeah, I guess good move on Nexon getting out of there is when they did.
I just gotta say one thing though. I made a video a while back on my own channel, the biggest mistake NCSoft could make with Blade and Soul, and it's one of those things that did stir up a lot of controversy, mainly from people who followed the Blade and Soul websites and such. And the story itself, hearing that it's generic, and I was reading it on a variety of different streams, just because I was curious. Because I saw the cinematics take place in the game, and I was like, all right, this is decent, but I don't really see this amazing story that everyone says that they should postpone all the content that's released in the East for. And I still don't. I read the storyline, and I'm like, it looks like a cheap translation in a sense. Everyone's like, oh, they're going to completely rework the storyline and make it amazing. It's like they didn't do any of that. And it just makes me think to myself, what did they do with the 3 years? Did they just sit on the game and wait for NCSoft's portfolio to sink? Is that what happened? And so they used it as sort of like an emergency plan to release it over here in the West? Or is it actually something that they worked on? And it doesn't seem to be the latter. I don't think that they actually did anything to really westernize this experience. And it's a huge issue because people like myself who saw that, who played the game over in the East, are going to realize that it basically is just a cheap sort of translation sent over here to the West. And that's a big problem moving forward because people are like, why isn't all the content that's released over there, because the storyline is generic, why isn't it released over here? Because the game isn't really story-based. I mean, it is story-based, but the story isn't really that like great. Like it's not like a Star Wars: The Old Republic storyline where that game
Larry
has
just
its main
grinning like
focus
the
story,
Cheshire Cat right there.
It's well, it's kind of true. It's kind of true, and I've kind of taken. I have been spoiled. I'll put it this way: I've been spoiled by Star Wars: The Old Republic, and so anytime I go into any other game, I'm kind of already expecting less when it comes to the amount of story or the quality of story. And that's not to say that there isn't games that are equal to Star Wars: The Old Republic, because there are. But that's kind of right now. That's like the bar, and so I'm okay with kind of generic stuff. Like for instance, I love Neverwinter. Neverwinter's story is kind of crap.
There's a story?
but yes, there is.
There is?
But,
Wow.
But it's they know that it kind of they kind of know that it's not the best story, or they know that it's been done over and over again already, and they kind of embrace that, and let
it be known that Larry Everett just said story writing by R.A. SWTOR isn't that great.
That's exactly what I said.
That great. I don't know. I think
he killed Chewbacca. He killed Chewbacca.
I think you two are being negative Nancy's. I gotta actually give a little bit of a turnaround. Right now, my experience with Blade and Soul so far gives it an 8 from me. Again, somebody on YouTube said, "Don't give numbers. The numbers don't mean anything." You're right. They don't mean shit. I'm just making it up. To me,
How much of that is combat?
A 7 is a lot. Most of it, almost all of it. Visually, it's kind of on par for me, not stellar, some stuff I don't like, some stuff I do like. Storytelling, I like the story itself, but there are generic tropes in it. The questing is everything. One thing that I do like, I like the way they handle phasing. I like the way that they handle zoning in between zones. There's just a quick little blip, and you're in the next zone. It isn't a loading screen, and you can see the other zone through the clear shield, so it does at least preserve the illusion of one big open world. There are lots of little things like that in addition to the combat that I like. I'm going to give it a 7.5 to an 8. Now, if that goes up or down, it would be based on some more play time to see, does it really stick with me and resonate long term? I love the weapon upgrade system. I just like the whole, and I love this in Final Fantasy XIV, the idea of you get a weapon and that weapon evolves with you. You're not constantly looking for the next new sexy so you can throw the old sexy away. It's make the old sexy sexier because your character is now sexier too. I love that whole concept. I love the way it's implemented in Blade and Soul. There's a lot of good things there. It is a little bit late though. So yeah, I'll trend right at about a 7.5 to an 8, and leave it there until I play some more.
I just want to say a couple of quick things really quick.
Go for it.
I really hope developers are watching this, which I really doubt they are. But it's one of those things where
you would be surprised at the emails I get, sir.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I look at games, especially MMOs. They're always trying to put some sort of story element in place now. We saw it with Skyforge. We see it with Blade and Soul. I really wish that unless they wanted to go all in with story, they just stopped doing it altogether. Because I would rather those resources be placed in something like gameplay to make the experience more varied than the sort of putting those resources into story and sort of wasting all that time creating a generic plot that a lot of people won't really remember. And I see that issue with Blade and Soul. I really wish they would have focused on making the zones more open-ended, more dynamic, and really just focused the game more so on the combat and sort of use that crutch, but evolved it to a sense that that's why you're playing Blade and Soul, is the combat, the PvP. Maybe make like a huge Warzone PvP system since the combat is so amazing. Utilize that and maybe tie that into the lore that you read, but don't really focus on the story as much as they are. And that's a huge issue I see with that. But all in all, and a lot of people have griped on my criticisms of Blade and Soul, I criticize games that I love a lot more than I criticize games that I don't give a crap about, because I want to see them excel. And so I look at Blade and Soul as a game that I will play, but right now, because I know that the only reason why I like it is the combat in the PvP, I can only give it a 7.5. Maybe the English version will make me like the game more, but I just don't see it moving from a 7.5. It might hit an 8, though, but that's really the highest it will go.
See, and then you would complain that you weren't the chosen one, and that's how MMOs work. Your player is the chosen one, and all these other millions of people are also the chosen ones. Speaking of reviews, let's keep this one quick. I also did a first look this week for ASTA from WebZen. Really, the only thing I can say for this is if you're looking for that nostalgic MMO feel, then this probably hits that sweet spot. If you like,
Wait,
you know,
nostalgic for what?
like
I
if
mean,
if you remember what vanilla WoW was like, this probably will hit a little bit of that. Oh, I remember when MMOs did this. I really don't have anything else good to say about the game.
Then do you just want to stab your eyeball with a fork or something after that?
Yeah, I mean,
Once
it
you realize
looks
that-
nostalgic too. I mean,
Yeah, I was looking at the video going, wow, this is
yeah,
welcome to 10 years ago.
yeah. It started development in 2010 too, so it's like, well, wait a minute. I get that you've been working on this for 5 years, so you may not be cutting edge as far as the graphics go, but you started in 2010. That was years after World of Warcraft came out. Why do you look like this? Why was this the starting point for what your graphics would look like? I don't know. I don't want to bash it too badly. I'm not going to play it. I did have a little nostalgic ping, and I was like, oh, I remember doing stuff like this. But yeah, I can't really recommend it unless you're just really looking for. You played Vanilla WoW, and everything else from then on was just crap for you. Every innovation was awful. You don't like, anything innovative or new in the last 5 years to 8 years in the MMO genre. Then maybe ASTA is the game for you. I can't imagine this doing very well from WebZen in the West here at all. Anything else?
I don't know. I looked at the video knowing that I wouldn't actually want to play it, and it just confirmed everything I thought about it. It reminded me a lot of Ion in a sense. I don't know why, because Ion looks like it's a better MMO just in terms of its mechanics and stuff.
Certainly prettier.
But yeah, but it's just, I don't know. It sort of gave me that same feeling that maybe I might be able to play it nostalgic for an hour, but after that, I'm like, why did I just waste my time on an experience I know I'm not going to enjoy for longer than an hour? So I don't know. I thought I might want to try it out when I saw the initial trailer, but the trailer really made it look a lot better than it actually was. Like, they did a really good job with that trailer to make it look that good compared to the actual game. So I don't know.
Yeah, I did the first look yesterday. It's already been uninstalled. I mean, I guess that's all I can say. I'm not
already been uninstalled. MMOBomb.com.
I'm not going to give it a score. I don't want to be mean to it. I mean, it does what it's supposed to, and I'm sure there's people that are going to enjoy it. For me, it was a ping of nostalgia and nothing more. Larry, you didn't play it, but I'm getting the sense that you felt the same thing.
Yeah, I watched the video too, and what's really funny is it reminded me of Villagers and Heroes.
Oh,
is
wow.
what it actually reminded me of. When I'm watching the video going, wow, this is just like Villagers and Heroes without, the fun harvesting stuff. So, yeah, that's where I stand. I'm pretty much with you guys. 100%.
Yeah, check it out if you want to. I mean, but I did post another exciting first look video today, so if you're looking for something new to play, World of Fishing first look is now up on MMOBomb.com and our YouTube page, so make sure you check it out. I'm sure it's going to have 2 million views by tomorrow. Let's slide over to the weekly bombs. I'll go first. We were talking about Blade Soul quite a bit, and so I'll take the positive road for these negative Nancys also on the show. I'm going to give a dub bomb to NCSoft. I actually enjoyed Blade Soul a lot more than I thought I would. A lot more than I thought I was going to. And I want to get even further in the game to see if it sticks with me longer term. But I also have to give an A bomb here. There is a apparent big discrepancy that we found out with a friend of mine, Niabari, and I playing this, figuring out my account was a premium account, his account was a free account, and we both got to about the same place in the game. We weren't necessarily like selling a bunch of stuff to get in-game currency and stuff, but there was a big discrepancy in the currency rate, in-game currency farm rate for the premium account and the free-to-play account. By level 18 or 19, I had double the in-game currency that Niabari had, and with the ability to exchange in-game currency for cash shop currency, I don't like that. I'm okay with there being a bit of a bonus, but we were talking about low amounts of currency to go from level 1 through 18, and to already have double is a huge difference when you're talking about copper and bronze. You haven't even gotten to gold yet. And so that they've got to tweak that one, and that may be changed. Beta, they said they are looking at all of the exchange rates and everything, so that's got to change. Huge A-bomb to that. Mr. Everett, why don't you go, sir?
I'm going to have to talk about role players in MMOs. This goes overarching all the new stuff that we have seen in MMOs, and the lack of catering to role players. And actually understanding what they're looking for, because and the reason why I want to point these guys. Well, I mean that's absolutely, that's like part of it. That's part, but I think it's a little bit more fundamental than that. Is that people just don't understand what role players are looking for, but and the reason that they should know what role players are looking for is because here is a group of people that will stick with the game probably longer than anybody else. They are, they're solid. If they have an IP that they really, really enjoy, they're going to stick with it. They're going to throw money at you. I mean, my server, which is a roleplay server, the auction house prices are insane for like clothing and things along that line. It is, I mean, they really are really interested in that kind of stuff. So if you have a free to play game or whatever, and you're not catering to role players, you are missing a huge market opportunity here. And so they just don't understand it. They don't understand what makes role players want to do things. They want to be there are some things now that have changed with, say, for instance, Tor, that are interesting to role players, but not so much. I mean, the whole idea of phasing doesn't. That irks role players, because there's one player that doesn't see this, yep, and another player that sees that. So do stuff for the role players. Give us chat bubbles, something.
Just chat bubbles. That's all. That's all we want.
That's all we really want. That's all we really want.
Go ahead, Zach.
I'm going to give a massive A-bomb to people who play the auction house and undercut the hell out of everything that they post to ruin the markets. Because it's one of those things where if you undercut by 50%, not only are you giving basically a buy two get one free deal to everyone on the auction house and ruining your own profits, but you're also destroying my profits. And as someone who likes to play the auction house, if I don't have 10 million or so to buy out every single page of your stupid undercuts, dropping the price from 1900 for Molex, I think it's called, the material, all the way down to, I think it's at 900 is what I looked at last night. Dropped it by 1,000. If you do that, I'm sorry. I said it on Twitter, but you're an asshole. Just don't do that, because go ahead.
Is that now? Wait a second. Is that actually somebody going, I'm going to undercut everybody and not make any money at all? Because obviously, I mean, I don't think anybody will go to an auction house. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I don't do it, and I play the auction house. I don't think anybody goes to the auction house and goes, I'm not going to make any money on this, even if it's a good material. They just, no, forget it. I don't want any money. I don't want any credits. I just want to get rid of this stuff. I mean, is that what they're doing?
There's this one guy named Dark Poet.
Oh my God, he's calling them out by name.
Dark Poet, we're looking at you.
I even called him out on chat too. He literally will post multiple pages of something for upwards to 1,000 less per unit. In other words, he's basically dropping the price by about 40 to 50,000 per stack, which means he's basically giving away every third stack for free. And it's absolutely ridiculous because it ruins the market. And I've seen across all materials him doing the same thing. It's like he bots the game. And I even tried to report him because there's no way that a single person can post 3 pages of materials of the same material a day without botting across multiple characters. This is no way. Because he would literally have to log in on a schedule with a timer on his phone to do that. It's just not possible. So yeah, people actually try and ruin the market. I that's the only excuse for that. That really just don't know how to play the market at all.
I don't know. I don't really have a problem with it because I think that.
I mean, that's got to be somebody making them for almost nothing and then saying, let's turn them around for a quick profit. I know it'll sell right away because it's half price, right? I don't think it's intentionally.
A quick profit is just dropping it by 1 per unit. You don't have to
No,
drop
but then he's got to wait for it to sell. You know, if he puts it in there at 900, he's like, oh, these are going to sell instantly.
Exactly. Here's the thing that I run into whenever I'm selling stuff on the auction house like that. If I undercut, and I play the market. I play the auction house. I play the GT on tour all the time. That's like I have made so much money. It's insane. And the thing is, though, I'll get like a whole. This is the problem that I'm running into currently. Is I have a limited amount of storage. Yeah, imagine that. I have a limited amount of storage, even though you can have so many characters. I hate using characters as banks because it works horribly. And I only have on my legacy storage. I only have 5 bays. I have to get rid of some of that stuff. And in order for me to get rid of some of that stuff and make sure that I get rid of that stuff, is I have to undercut people by an amount that they would not be willing to drop down to. And so maybe that's what's going on here. I mean, if it's by a third, that makes sense. I mean, that's a good cut.
But the thing is, you're probably doing it with stuff that's not the top materials, like grade 8 materials. I can understand if it's lower stuff because chances are that probably won't sell as quick. But when you're doing it for materials that are endgame materials, it's ridiculous because they're going to sell instantly anyhow. Because whenever you sell at market price for any of the materials that are grade 8, they sell almost immediately. And so right now, I'm buying all this, like I'm buying anything that prices it below 1,000 off of the auction house because I know it's going to go back up as soon as a lot of people quit the game because inflation's going to hit due to the character tokens and people having more money because they're basically buying currency with the character tokens. So I know it's going to eventually go up. So I just have literally rows upon rows of that same material in my cargo waiting to sell it for double the price.
So there you go. That's what you do. You buy all of his stuff.
It's so obnoxious. I can make that money now. I literally have 4.6 million sitting in my cargo just waiting to be sold. And it's so painful.
Zach, you are my favorite person. And I just, the way you described your alt mules and everything, Larry, I just imagined that, like, if you flipped your camera around and showed us your monitor and the wall behind it, there's probably Post-it notes with your character names and what's in each of their inventories right now.
I really wish I kept better track of that because trying to find one thing is horrible on... Like, where is that Cathar Honor Sword? I know somebody had it. 15 characters later, there it is.
I just love playing markets. I mean, that's why I'm a finance major in college. I love markets. I love playing them. And I'm not the only one. 'Cause a couple of my friends have been noticing that same trend in SWTOR right now. And they're all getting just as angry as I am.
I even reported them. From the viewers, Chris says, hey, already refunded 3 copies of Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns in my house. We all hate the X-Pack. Way too much hard grind in this non-casual friendly game. Shame. And Jason kind of shared that last week, that, you know, there's an awful lot of grind in here, and he's going to see just how bad it is. He'll report back to us, I'm sure, next week on the Free-to-Play cast. Zach, why don't you take our friend Neobari's comment there, and also on Blade and Soul.
Yeah, Neobari says, A-Bomb the Blade and Soul closed beta, 2 issues. First, the original server from Alpha was unplayable as it had a 2,000-person queue on it, which was over a 90-minute wait.
Ooh.
Second is the game in its current state is misery as a free player. That's because the in-game currency you get is next to nothing. As a premium player, you get a whole bunch extra. I couldn't even purchase beginner food at level 20 with all the copper I'd gotten. Plus, the standard loot system in dungeons is a bidding system, which means free players will have to run things numerous times to finally earn money from other people's bids to buy anything. There needs to be more money given to players, or their business will be elsewhere, or will be going elsewhere. I agree with that. I never saw that watching it, but it's one of those things where I can understand 10% less, but it sounds like people are getting like 80% less.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact percentage is off the top of my head, but when we did Bomb Live on Monday, I did Blade and Soul, and Neobari was hanging out in chat, and he was maybe half a level behind me, and that's when we kind of realized he made a comment about how much in-game currency he saw displayed on my screen, and was like, whoa, wait a minute. And I said, no, I'm not. I haven't been I've been disassembling everything. I haven't been selling everything to vendors or anything along the way. Nothing that would give me an influx of in-game currency. It was a pretty big discrepancy. Why don't you take the next one there, Mr. Larry?
All right. Tepic, I'm going to say.
Yep.
Probably right. Said you should stop using scores like lots of other sites have. They are meaningless. Everyone interprets them completely different. I see 6.5 as a good score. Some others think anything rated below 7 must mean absolutely terrible. I actually don't like the use of scores myself. I know that like Metacritic and things along that line do, and sometimes a developer's paycheck is based off of those scores as well. I wish they wouldn't be. I'm personally one of those people. I follow certain people, whether I agree with them or not, and don't read the scores. I read what they write and what they've talked about, and so.
Yeah, and on the official MMOBomb.com page, we don't rate anything with a score. The only time we ever do scores is on this show, and it's to have a little bit of fun, and it's our own personal little scores. But I'm right with you, Tepic. As I've mentioned before, when I score mine, I use 7 as a pretty average game. It does everything it's supposed to. It does it well. And so a 6.5 to me is probably a pretty decent game. And an 8 and a 9 is really good. So. Yeah, that's why we don't do anything officially besides our own little personal ones that we like to bat around on the show here. Zanika says, A-bomb to gender locking. A lot of people don't mind it, but a lot of people do and won't play games that incorporate this. And just for that alone, it needs to stop. There's absolutely no positives to it on the player side. It's not a good thing. No one likes it. They just tolerate it. You'll probably never hear anyone say, I refuse to play this game because both male and female characters can be mages. So stop hindering your player-based games. With that out of the way, dub bomb to the show. Been watching since the first episode. Well, thank you for that. We certainly appreciate that.
Awesome.
Certainly appreciate that. I'm kind of split on gender locking. I don't really care. As long as if your game starts that way, then fine. What I really don't like is games like Terra where it wasn't gender locked, but their last few classes have been gender locked. It's like, wait, you didn't want to pay money to make both of them? What happened here? I don't like when you start deviating from what you've always done for no apparent, no lore-based reason or anything like that. I don't know.
Yeah. My thing is, go ahead, Larry.
No, I'm pretty much with Mike. I think that there is certain reasons that you would want there to be gender lock. And usually they're lore based or something along that line. So I don't really necessarily have an issue with gender locking in and of itself, but I think that if you're going for a mass appeal, you can't have it.
Yep.
As a game developer. Yeah.
Go ahead, Zach.
I just don't like race locking. And it's not that I don't like specific races, but when I have to play as a Reaper, as an Ellen within Terra, it breaks all immersion. Because I don't personally like the Ellen. It's too cutesy for me. So it's one of those things where I probably would enjoy that class a lot more in Terra if it wasn't for that particular race. And so I don't really care too much for gender locking, but when it comes to race locking, that's a big issue for me because it tends to always be cooler classes that are locked behind the cutesy little tiny races that are just there for sort of like anime-ish sort of chibi appeal, and I don't like that at all. I think that they need to really stop that. But it tends to only be Eastern games that do that, so it's not really that big of an issue.
Go ahead, take the next one, Zach.
Yep, the Enigma says the bomb goes to Tree of Savior. Despite the fact the game is a tad laggy at the moment, the game's gorgeous, has fantastic soundtrack, and is basically the Final Fantasy meets Diablo MMO I didn't know I wanted. A bomb, cautionary bomb, but it goes to Blizzard and Overwatch. While I'm sure we'll hear what business model they have planned at BlizzCon, I fear that Blizzard might either A, make it buy to play, but have a buy-in price, but have the buy-in price be off-putting and pricey to consumers, or make it free to play, which I feel they don't have a great track record of doing. An incredibly promising brand new IP, really well received beta, and the great post-launch support of Blizzard could turn people off if they don't get the model right. We all 100% agree, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about this kind of last week on, maybe buy to play actually makes a little more sense than we initially thought looking at Overwatch and the whole characters, and it really doesn't make sense to buy characters when you can change characters in the middle of the match. That creates an imbalance when somebody else maybe hasn't bought all those characters. Yeah, I don't know. We would expect that we'll have that this weekend here as BlizzCon kicks off. Is it your turn, Larry?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Jusby? Sure, we'll go with that. Says the bomb to Tree of Savior yet again. For being based off Lithuanian mythology.
Yep.
And when I actually started reading what's written on the screen, I was shocked. So many places and names from Lithuania. Starting Zone is a place where I live right now. Well, alrighty. It's weird and awesome at the same time to see fragments of your culture in games. Being an American, I see a lot of my culture in a lot of games, but I'm glad to see. I'm really glad to see some, different cultures in different games all the time. So yeah, I mean, hats off to Tree of Savior, pulling from Lithuania. That's great.
Really cool. That's really cool. And we'd love to be covering more Zach and I were talking about this before the show. We'd love to be covering more Tree of Savior news for you. Unfortunately, there just ain't no news on it yet, besides, hey, they're going to have a closed beta event, which we do report on MMOBomb.com. We're working on getting access to do a first look video. Of course, we have to respect embargoes and timelines and things like that. Vanja Ivanik says, "The bomb goes to Robocraft. The new introduction of mech legs is both awesome and hilarious at the same time. Watching giant robots stumble on the ground after a huge jump or jumping on one leg will never get old. Newly added League mode is a huge step in the right direction for this game as well. Also, this is a game with the cheapest premium subscription out of all the other vehicle-based fighting games. Robocraft is evolving on every turn, and I can't wait to see what is next." A-Bomb goes to Area Games and Dragomon Hunter for releasing it into open beta only a few weeks, it wasn't even a few weeks, after selling insanely expensive Founders Packs which granted access to closed beta, proving us once again what kind of money-grabbing company they really are. I can take a number 2 that will last longer than their closed beta. Game will most likely shut down in 2016, and Area Games will just move on to destroy another game. Huge shout out to you guys. You have a fan in Croatia. Well, shout out to Croatia. And it wasn't even a few weeks. I was stunned when I was writing that article. They sold the Founders Packs. Closed beta went live. 7 days later, they said, you don't need a key to access closed beta anymore. And when this closed beta ends, we're immediately going to go into open beta. So all the Founders Pack got you was 7 days of closed beta wiped access anyway, and the in-game goodies. So yeah, totally agree.
Wow, that's crazy. I don't understand that. Why that whole? How could they do that to their customers? How could they go, hey, give us a whole bunch of money? And did it just not? Was it not financially feasible for them to continue a closed beta for the people that paid for it?
I have no idea.
Populated.
Yeah, it was really popular. There was so much lag in, Elysium. Wasn't that the name of the
Yeah.
city? There was so much lag in that city because there were so many people. Question of the week last week, is art style an important point you consider when deciding to play an MMO? Why or why not? Penlion says, yes, art style does matter. I passed on Trove because of the blocky art style and did not care for the big head style of Dragamon Hunters. I also prefer games that have different armor sets for male and female characters. As for sub-based games, sure, it may be good value, but why pay for something you can get for free? Most of us have bought a game, played a few hours, and never touched it again. It can be argued that free-to-play games need to try harder because they need to convince you to open your wallet. I've played several free-to-play titles, some for months, some for a couple of years. When I spend money on a game, my main motive is to thank the developers for such a great game, not because I have to buy something in the cash shop. I think a lot of us tend to think that way. I mean, I know Larry and I have shelled out money for things we know we really weren't going to play for long periods of time over at Game Breaker, but they deserved a couple of bucks for what they did.
Yeah, exactly.
Zach, go ahead.
The green one says, Intro of the Week. I will try all anime-style games no matter how bad. I try to steer away from photorealistic games. I know very few agree with me, but I find cartoony graphics and art style to be more appealing. I agree with that in some cases, but it depends how cutesy the anime gets.
Yeah, I can see it actually working in the favor, especially in the MMO genre, because the idea is that you play this game for years, and realistic graphics degrade.
Yep, very quickly.
They drop into that uncanny valley before you know it.
Yep.
Go ahead, Larry.
From Hell says, I normally don't judge a game solely on art style unless it's way too unappealing, lazy, or half-assed. R2 games come to mind since their games seem to share the same artwork and playstyle. I'm more interested in the actual game. A game could look beautiful and very realistic, but if it's going to play exactly like every other game in the same genre, why waste my time? If it's changed for change's sake, I might as well play what I'm playing. It's nice to see how much graphics have improved, but not every game has to look realistic. There's nothing wrong with cartoony or anime chibi art style, and I agree. I think he's dead on. I do think that, I mean, there is certainly merit to. If you do the same thing with better graphics, I do think that is possibly something to consider when buying a new game or jumping into a new game. But it's definitely not everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Sailor Naruto 39 says, question of the week, as a major graphics whore, art style and graphics is a big deal for me playing a game. Well, that makes sense. It's why I haven't gotten on the Minecraft bandwagon, because I'm not a fan of the simple graphics. I would not play a game if I don't like the style, as graphics are the first thing I judge a game for. The kind of game graphics I like are like Vindictus, Warframe, Blade and Soul, and the like. I see games like relationships. Attract me to you with looks, graphics, and keep me with your personality, gameplay, and mechanics. Some people will shame me for that, but oh well. By the way, I'd give magicman a go too. Oh, that stems from last week's conversation. Well, I'm flattered, thank you. I've attracted you with the looks. Now stay for my gameplay and mechanics. Moving on! Go ahead, Zach.
JSHTNG says, art style is definitely one of the things that gets me to play a game. I'm not as bothered with the character and armor modeling as others may be, but world aesthetics, weapon designs, and skill effects can keep me playing a completely generic game for longer than I know I should. Terra, Blade, and Soul, which I have been keeping an eye on, and Guild Wars 2 are big examples, but the most curious one for me is anything made by the developer X Legend after Eden Eternal, whose art and animation style just carried over to all their newer games. I've tried almost all of their newer releases for some period of time, simply because I find their skill animations quite appealing compared to those in other MMOs.
That game is thrown out there a lot when you hear about art style, is Eden Eternal.
Well, I mean, my thing is, like, with Star Wars Old Republic, I like its art style. A lot of people don't, but I really like its art style.
I hate my character model. Go ahead, finish this up, Larry.
All right, Terranova667 says art style is something I take into consideration, but it's not something that would stop me from playing a game because of it. In most cases, if it's interesting or different enough, I will be more inclined to try it out. I agree with the spirit of this, but I don't agree with the idea that it would not stop me from playing a game. Oops.
Uh-oh. Oh, somebody didn't like art style. What's going on?
So, somebody really didn't like art style there. So, sorry about that. I think it would stop me from playing the game because, like some of the other commenters have said before, like with Trove, I think Trove is an amazing game, but I have trouble getting into it because of its art style.
Pretty divisive question of the week. That was the first time that we got a lot of split decisions on that one. So I figure let's start an internet war with this week's question of the week. All right, let's ask a basic question. When it comes down to it, do you prefer a free-to-play MMO, a buy-to-play MMO, or a subscription-based MMO? Why or why not? And none of you jokers saying that you'll play all three. We all play all three. I'm talking about you have to pick one. It's your favorite payment model. Which one is it? Larry, thank you so much for joining us this week. It was an absolute pleasure. It's always fun.
Yes,
where can everybody find you? Where are you working? Where's the Twitter, which I've displayed on the screen the entire show? And where can everybody see all the stuff you're doing?
Well, the best place to find me would be on MassivelyOP.com. We do have .net as well, but MassivelyOP, and I do the Hyperspace Beacon there. I also do Tamriel Infinium, as well as I do the comic strip that we do over there, and I also do Massively Opinionated. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, Shadow, SHADDOE, if you want to see some of the stuff that I do. Otherwise, you can go to Hyperspace Beacon on just about anything, like hyperspacebeacon.com, on Tumblr, on YouTube.
Tinder.
Tinder. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to grab Hyperspace Beacon on Tinder.
When you see Hyperspace Beacon pop up on your Tinder, swipe right. Go ahead, Zach. Where can everybody follow you?
You just follow me on Twitter at Zach Sharps, and that's pretty much it. I post all my content up on there, so if I ever do make a personal video, it will be up on my Twitter. So.
Awesome. I'm Mike Byrne, a.k.a. Magic Man. You can follow me, of course, on Twitter at MagicMan1, MagickMann1. Give me a follow, and I will occasionally tweet at your face. Come on over to MMOBomb.com. Check out all the articles, the videos, the giveaways, which we got a couple more going up this week, and all the free-to-play goodness you could ever want, gang. It's been fun. Thank you once again to Larry and Zach. Until next time, stay safe. We'll see you on the servers.